How in the world is it possible that the largest software supply chain attack in history, the one hitting NPM packages receiving billions of downloads, stole only 5 cents from its victims? Is this all hype and fear mongering by vendors inclined on selling their products to you? Or is there more to the story? I'm Ak Sharma, tech journalist and security researcher with over a decade of experience in AppSec, cybersecurity reporting, supply chains, and malware analyses. I can see when media angles are missing the bigger picture. So what is exactly going on here? Let's dive in. So if you've been in the space long enough, you know this has been a very busy month for cybersecurity practitioners. Earlier this month, the NPM ecosystem saw a supply chain compromise affecting packages called Chalk and Debug. These are published by a maintainer account called QIX. This maintainer fell victim to a phishing email. If you look at the phishing email, it's actually pretty damn convincing. It's got the same NPM wording, the branding, and even a sent by NPM with love, that signature at the bottom. So this maintainer released a statement. Unfortunately, they did click the link in there. And even the phishing form had a fake two-factor authentication field in there. So they even got their 2FA code, and the attackers were able to get into the maintainer's account and publish unauthorized new versions of the libraries. So in these compromised versions, attackers injected operations for like stealing crypto. Every time a user is using crypto wallet or something, the attackers could get their hands on it. So in short, trusted packages compromised, massive reach, and malicious code snuck into these newer versions of these packages. It's a loss for everyone. It undermines trust in the open source ecosystem. And this is exactly how software supply chain attacks escalate. But here's the twist. Even though on the surface this attack seems terrifying, SEAL's Intel team called it the largest supply chain attack in history. And yet when they measured the total amount stolen, it was underwhelming. About 5 cents in Ethereum were stolen, another $20 in some meme coin, and I think Socket Security additionally traced some wallets linked to the campaign, showing that total loss was a couple of $100s. So is this all that important as a supply chain attack example? First of all, let's look at the reasons why the damage itself was low, and then let's see what other damage was caused by these attacks. So this attack had vector limitations. If you read the articles and news reports carefully, there are certain prerequisites, certain criteria that need to be met on the victim's machine for the attack to successfully execute. For example, running compromised dependencies during a very specific time window, and the end users running very specific functions like Ethereum related libraries. This certainly limits the exposure. Many developers or many users may never run those operations, so the attack would never trigger on their machines. That does not mean the attack itself was not potent. It had a lot of potential had it executed on every machine that it reached. Which brings me to my next point. The user environment and the behavior, they determine the extent of an attack. Not every user may have crypto wallets installed on their computer, or they'll execute it during the same time that they get the compromised code, which again limits the reach of this attack in practical terms. So even if compromised code did reach your build, it may not always execute. And to top it off, many package consumers just use cached versions, bundlers, or environments which just won't run the offending bits of code. Then comes time for detection and patches. I think the beauty of open source ecosystem is someone on social media just screams, like broadcasts, that a supply chain attack going on. Don't install this package, you'll get compromised. That just makes waves very fast. Even if like you were using a security product that did not catch that offending package, or I think just the noise around it will provide enough intel to security researchers and even that company, the vendor making those products, who can then immediately act on it, add that package to a block list, make sure it never reaches your builds. So I think it's really the prompt action and incident response by security practitioners around the world that can thwart the damage from an attack. Another really important point is it would be kind of silly to measure loss occurring from supply chain attacks in terms of direct cost or direct financial loss. A lot of the cost is spent on investigation. The people hours spent on investigating the environments after a compromise, tracing threat actors, making sure your machines are not compromised, scanning your customers' environments and checking if your customers have been compromised, letting your customers know if they have or haven't been compromised via emails, press releases, and if you or your customers have been compromised, messaging, using very specific wording for the press, like how you want this security disclosure communicated to your both customers, prospects, and the wider community. All that time spent there could have been used towards productive tasks. So the cost associated with that, like the resources spent on just auditing environments, tracing the attack, trying to trace the threat actors behind it and what exactly it's doing, analyzing the malicious code, I think that is a bigger waste than some cryptocurrency stolen through it. Because once even as much as an allegation of a new security vulnerability 0-day occurs on social media, and this is an actual attack, malicious code, not just an allegation, security researchers and security teams around the world will jump on it. They'll start spending countless hours cleaning up dependencies, environments, assessing risk, and that just cannot be measured in stolen Ethereum, but in lost time, opportunity, and mental load. And this is not a one-off attack, which is what's important. The same week, like 2-3 days prior to this largest supply chain attack in history, there was what's been described as Singularity or NX attack, where more than 2,180 GitHub accounts were compromised. Private GitHub repositories were turned public through an attack vector. So that is also a supply chain attack that already was making waves, and then this happens. But wait, it doesn't stop here. Last week, if you're paying attention, we became aware of this Shai Hulud campaign, initially believed to affect 40 projects. Now I think some vendors, including Step Security, are suspecting like 500 plus NPM packages have been compromised. Different attacks, not all of them are necessarily linked or from the same threat actor, but it shows you the varying degrees of exploits and tactics and techniques they'll use. Because I think one of the largest supply chain attack, what we are calling, that happened through a phishing email. The one before that, Singularity, that happened through unauthorized pull requests. And I think research is being done to get to the root cause of the most recent supply chain attack affecting 500 packages, but the message is the same. These attacks show a pattern. Threat actors are experimenting at scale with supply chain as attack surface more aggressively than ever. We might not always see massive monetary theft, but the blueprint is clearer. Look at all the resources burned and people hours spent chasing this. So I think when we are talking about costs from supply chain attacks, you have to factor in that, the panic it causes and the inconvenience to customers. So given this pattern, what can you do to protect yourself from supply chain risks? Well, it's no brainer. Audit your dependencies. I've said this countless times, as have my peers. You can do this manually, but it'd be very difficult to do this manually because if you're using, if you have a list of what is in your application, it may have certain dependencies, say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and this A, B, C might be using another dependency, say, I don't know, X, Y, Z. This X, Y, Z is using yet another dependency called, say, DEF, and it's that DEF that gets compromised, which you won't be able to see this readily manually. If you were inspecting your manifest files manually, you wouldn't be able to see it. So you need automation tools for it. That's one way to prevent it, by auditing your dependencies, making sure you're using safe, known safe versions. Another key thing to do is to limit publishing permissions. Sometimes you may have one or two co-maintainers, right? It's better to know really specifically who they are or if you can trust them sufficiently, because many times someone may be pretending online to have your best interest and be a researcher, and this has happened before. Yeah, things can go south real fast if they are just a rogue maintainer or some threat actor pretending to contributing to your project in good cause. Use dependency pinning or lock files. Again, this goes back to my earlier point of using known safe versions. You can specify what versions of dependencies or software libraries will you be comfortable using basically. That way, even if there's a latest update, because the traditional advice has been keep applying patches. That advice is like a two-edged sword, because most of the times you will get security updates, but in case of a compromise, you can actually get bad code into your software build. So very important to be aware of it when using open source components. It's much, much, much safer to pin your dependencies to a latest version, but known safe version that isn't compromised. Which brings us to our next point. Monitor your supply chains for unexpected updates. This can be done with, again, security solutions, SBOMs, and just anything that is able to scan, because tools exist now that can scan your software builds for latest projects that are widely popular for changes in them. And if it's a problematic update, some tools are capable of blocking it right then and there. And lastly, educate your teams. As you saw, this largest supply chain attack happened due to a simple phishing email, and the attackers even got their hands on the two-factor code. So a little bit of due diligence and just making everyone on your team aware of thinking twice before clicking on an email, it goes a long way. It sounds very simple, but look at what the extent of damage was from this attack. So much panic everywhere. So was it all noise and overreaction? No, I don't think so. I think what I said consistently, that it's to do with the resources spent and the mental effort spent and people hours spent in investigating, trying to identify what is the extent of damage from this malware. Because malware can be covert. It doesn't show all its signs all upfront. It could be an espionage malware. It could be a malware which is a wiper. You just don't know what it'll do silently and to what extent is the damage. Even 5 cents or a few dollars stolen, it does reveal a crack in the foundation. The threat is no longer if, but when the next such crack in the dependencies will occur. How soon? So if you're a dev, maintainer, or part of the security leadership, take this as proof, not that things are okay, But that visibility matters. Because this attack made noise very early on, the damage could be controlled. Everyone jumped on it, the community came together, and we could prevent further damage through it. If you like these breakdowns, if you find them helpful, please hit like, click subscribe. Drop a comment below. What security narrative would you like me to focus on next? I'm Ak Sharma, and this is the Security Report.